This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Good morning, true seekers and true crime junkies. Welcome back to another episode of Hit the Road, Jack, Finding the Zodiac. We'll start the show this morning by introducing Terry Batcher.
Hi, kids. Hiya, and all of God's children, which we all are.
And Harriet Suchet.
I got my avatar going.
Nice.
I had.
All right.
Well, I just wanted to say real quick, I was able to pick this avatar for the show, and it's the day I voted a few years back, so I'm in all red, white, and blue.
I don't see the avatar that you're talking about, so I'm not sure what that is. I mean, I know what an avatar is, but I don't see your avatar, so nobody knows what you're, I think, talking about.
Okay, well,
it doesn't show up for some reason. Either way, that's fine.
We'll keep going.
I thought at this point it would kind of behoove me to kind of throw in that information that actually makes the proximity of Jack in Minnesota in this area that we're talking about as we continue with the Oakland County child murders. So I'm just going to flip over to the presentation at this point and kind of share some information that kind of led me back to this area. While we know that there were writings involved and there was, this huge hunch that these writings were from the same person, the Zodiac Killer, I wanted to give everybody kind of an idea of how I even entertained this area and these particular crimes. So Dennis had indicated that they had left California in 1976. And in his book, he writes, in the spring of 1976, we moved to Cotton, Minnesota. Just after we moved there, Jack bought several boxes of dynamite and began blowing stumps out of the ground. Now, the one thing that this crossed me is that he must have bought this place, right? I mean, you're not going to go buy dynamite and start blowing up your rental spot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make a little bit of sense in most people's minds? I mean,
it doesn't make sense because where is he going to get the permit to set it off to blow up stumps?
I don't.
Anyway.
All he had to do was apply for the permit to purchase it. So we'll have that later on when we get to that point in Cotton, Minnesota. But we do have the actual request to the sheriff's department to purchase the dynamite and. But as far as, blowing stumps out of the ground, that's just the only way we know that is by Dennis's recollection. Oh. He said that same year when cold set in, we had to sell everything and head to Texas. But I show that in the information and the stuff that we have that they did not actively move to Texas until 77. So it may have been wintertime of 77, but wintertime lasts all the way through March. So it sets up that time frame that places them there from I want to say at least spring of 1976 through about February, March of, February or March of 77. And of course, we know that even though Jack moves the family, he ultimately always goes back and grabs the stuff and comes back. He always has an exit plan as well as he has an entrance plan. So when he's like looking at areas, I put in here, if they moved in spring of 1976, then Jack has already been there to scout out the place that they're going to be moving to. So it says we would not have made it through the winter, but Jack brought all that dynamite with us to Texas. I didn't know what he planned on doing with it, which we find out later what he ends up having to do with it. Another thing that we found in Jack's belongings were these sets of keys. And of course, we're going to be talking about Chris Bush as one of the number one suspects in the Oakland County child murders. And his father was his dad was in finance for GMAC International, Harriet?
I think so. That's ringing a big bell there.
Well, that's what GMAC is. It's the finance arm of. It's the financial arm of that. That's where you get your loans to buy your new GM vehicle.
Gotcha. Okay, well, that makes sense. So he has this picture inside of here. It's a GMAC keychain, and it actually has a return with a code number on it. It would be so interesting to research and see where this code went to. There must be some database or some information. Either way, it's the drop in any mailbox, postage guaranteed. It had 2 locker keys on it. I mean, these clearly look like locker keys, right? Lock.
Right.
I don't know.
And,
it's a
Southfield.
Yeah, Southfield, Michigan.
That's spot on to where we're talking about. So
exactly, that's what I'm saying. So Southfield is literally smack dab within minutes of all the locations of the abductions and the sites.
Well, that when we get to it, that book address book you got is.
We're coming to that. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about that next. But literally speaking, this was found inside of that green army can for ammunition with the pilot blue pen that had the bent over tip, looking like somebody just went absolutely crazy using this pen. Pieces of rope that were cut to about 2-3 feet. Rolls of film that were undeveloped, which Dennis believed that he had found images of Black Dahlia that had been rephotographed onto a newer film so that he could probably dispose of the older photographs and still maintain and keep that information. So there were a lot of very red herrings inside this arsenal box, and these keys were one of them. Let's see here. One's Hudson and one's a Herdlock key. But I think when I tried to run these numbers, I came up with something either associated with a lockbox, or not a lockbox, but something like a, what was he stashing things in? Lockers at a train station or a post office box. Or I mean, there was just a few things that this could have been associated with.
Right.
Undeveloped filmed, and earrings from 4 different sets. So 1 earring from 4 different sets were also found inside this particular lockbox. So again, very interesting things.
That's a lot.
Now, we already talked about the fact that Nora has family in Michigan. So I kind of mapped it out to show everybody where the travel line would be. And we know that if they're on this side of the planet, that they're definitely visiting family. When I mapped this out, the original time, I came up with a 16-hour and 38-minute drive time from Cotton, Minnesota to Southfield, Michigan. There is an easier route, I want to say, which was going this direction and from the top end, and it was only about 12 hours to that location as well. So there was 2 different ways they could go in, but this was the one that it populated first, and then I realized that there was actually a connective road up here at the top of Michigan to the top portion of Wisconsin.
Well, plus you could have flown in too.
Oh yeah, 100%. There's nothing. The thing is that while they were in Cotton, Minnesota, Dennis said that Jack would take off for weeks at a time, purportedly hunting to feed the family. Yeah, I guess what I failed to ask is, did he actually show up with any meat?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Jack is notorious for, I'm taking off to get a pack of cigarettes and coming back 3 weeks later. And who does that in anybody's real life? Nobody does that.
Can I say something real quick yes. Here? This is when him and his crew are working under Gerald Ford, who was, I believe, from the Michigan area, right? Gerald Ford?
Yes.
So he's now the president, and I've gotten several decodes where he's talking about it's an execute order from Gerald Ford. So they're positioned there, right? It's not just Jack himself, but it's who they're working with. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on there, but this is under Ford.
Well, there's a person that Dennis talked about that was with them when they left Cotton, Minnesota. And I don't know if he was staying with them in Cotton, Minnesota, but Dennis said that for whatever reason, this man moved with them to Texas. And the story became that after they got to Texas, I guess Jack felt that this guy was blabbing too much. I don't know about what. He was making comments that maybe made him uncomfortable. But Dennis says that All he knows is that Jack beat this guy with a table leg, and they never saw him again. But the kids had to come out, and Jack paid them to clean up the blood around the kitchen and everything. So evidently it was just a complete madhouse inside of there. And they were stuck in the room while they were hearing this entire, beatdown go down. And I thought that was extremely interesting. And then he never saw the man again. So I don't know if Jack ultimately killed this man or what it was, but Dennis felt it was because he was saying too much or talking too much. But I can't, unless Jack is into something, what could he had to say that would have upset Jack so much to cause him to beat him with a table leg? I have no clue. Anyways.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have an idea.
It
was that second guy, the second guy that he was seen with, especially in the abduction of Tim King when we get to that.
Right. Well, it's kind of making sense, obviously, if everybody's talking about other people involved, you and Harriet as well, that this other person, exactly, Dennis doesn't know where he came from, up out of the blue. Wasn't like it was some, best friend of Jack's that he'd ever met before. And all of a sudden he's moving to Texas with him. So that brings us to this phone book found in Jack's stuff, and it 1976, 1977 phone book. So the time frame is absolutely spot on with the Oakland County child murders. This phone book belonged to a gal named Carol Settlemeyer, and at the time she lived in Southfield, Michigan. There was also a license plate, a Michigan license plate with this, and the number was 120, capital M as in Mary, capital D as in dog, capital E as in Edward. So there was a Michigan license plate found with this phone book. So evidently at some point in 1977, or at least as described by a family member, when I called and discussed it with a family member, they had indicated that they hadn't seen her for over 30 years. Until 1990, or over 30 years, almost 30 years until 1993. And in 1993, well, they didn't see her then at that point, but the Rangers had found her in California because her father had passed away. So they came looking for her. Now, they had claimed that she moved when she left, although they didn't know it at the time. She had moved to South Lake Tahoe, which is basically where Jack was exiting out of. I mean, we know he moved to North Highlands for a few months there in 1975, but by 1976, he was on his way to Cotton, Minnesota. And then she is leaving, and the family didn't hear boo from her. Not a word. Gone for basically almost 30 years. I want to say it was a sister or something like that had said. And no words from her. So it's not like she reached out and called back home or wrote letters, or nobody knew what happened to her. She just right off the face of the earth. Then at that point, at some point, she had moved to the Bay Area because she had obtained a post office box in Portola, California. So that was the last address the family had been given. Portola is the Santa Cruz area, and as well, not too far, basically, from the San Jose, Santa Clara area. So it's all still relative at this point. Either way, when I'm going through this phone book, I find receipts, and one of these receipts are dated, let's see, 12/20/76, and then the other one is dated 3/3/77. So, and why these two receipts? They don't look to be very important at all. They look like they could be food receipts. That, you know what I'm saying? They're not listed. It says your receipt, thank you, and the other one doesn't really have anything on it, but they're small amounts. So it'd be interesting to see how that plays in, but I know that it is relatively close to the time frames of some of these abductions and kills. And right. At least in the months, we have one in December, we have one in March, and these receipts are inside of there. There's also
not the kind of thing people usually save, that type of receipt.
Right. I mean, she obviously didn't care to use it for her taxes.
Right. Exactly. Not enough. Right.
Now, I wish at this point, and the book is gone, I have no way of going back. I wish I had actually scanned each and every page of it like I had done much of Dennis's stuff. But I can tell you what I did find in it myself personally. There was an over amount of bars listed in this book. Dog pounds for several different areas, which I know that dog hair has played into this somehow, whether or not it was, picked up in where they were dropped or what have you. We know that there was a ploy with animals. And so I see all of these different, and it's odd to have all those. I don't even keep my local Sacramento SPCA on file, you know? And she's got multiple in different locations all around the Southfield area. And then to top that off, there was a bunch of different police departments listed in here. So again, that was, you know, an eye opener for me. I mean, I think even more, she had more entries for things that were nonsensical than she had for her own friends, family, and otherwise.
One other point. The name Wayne West is in that book. I took the copies down when you posted it. I have them in my files. And when we get to the OCCK case miscellaneous files, one guy they were looking at and for was a Wayne West, and that is in that book.
You have the pages, or you have just the inside outside? Because I have the inside outside.
I have the copies that you posted online, or Dennis posted online from a long time ago, and Wayne West is on one of the pages.
Can you forward those to me? That must mean that.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That must mean that I uploaded them to the message board or something.
Yes.
Ooh,
Wayne West is in there, and that's big.
And I don't see a Wayne West on this first page at all, but I do see a John Hatfield. And Dennis thought the guy's name was John that had left with them. But just on this front, you can see Detective Bureau, Taylor Fire Department. Let's see. LP Police.
Well, I know you like to do things in order, but you know, I'm always making the big circle all the time and looking at stuff and that.
Another fire department, like there's just
right. But the big thing is going to be that cover pattern.
Vaughn Youth Bureau. What's the Youth Bureau about?
All right. Well,
there's the post office, Southland Post Office.
All that stuff should be researched.
Right.
The numbers, but you know, the big thing, and that's going to be that pattern of that book, that particular style of that, and you have that out of place blanket in Bush's bedroom. When we get to the Bush case, that he had a bedroom that was, you know, the motif was a certain way, and that blanket doesn't fit the motif, but it fits
There's
the
police
motif
at the top again. So we have police, detective bureau, 2 fire departments, 2 police departments. There's another number there that says dog pound. So and this is just the stuff that's written on the front side of her book. As you go through it, you get to see these other things. And she actually in here listed the Dearborn Police Department, but she has it listed as Dearborn Heights Pigs, which we know, and I get it. A lot of people were calling the police pigs, but we know that that is definitely a reference, right? That the Zodiac used. So there it was. Anyways, moving on to the back page. And of course, I have these receipts blown up here now. On the back page, we saw Newsboy Wayne. Oh, there you go. Wayne W.
Yep.
Is that what you were referring to?
Yes.
And would you say the guy's name was?
Well, he said it was Wayne West, and he was kind of mysterious, and he was named as a suspect if it's the same Wayne West. But how many Wayne W's are there? And was his number 287? We don't, you know, they don't share all that stuff in the documents, but
287-3849.
And the other keyword on the upper right too, and then that you've got Eureka.
What's that?
Zodiac Killer keyword.
Yes. Stan Store, Eureka.
Yep.
Huh. So is she already in California when she brings this with her before? Still an anomaly. Town and Country Restaurant. And then this Dr. Shermer, I actually looked this guy up, and he is a doctor in the Scotts Valley, was a doctor in the Scotts Valley area where Jack came from before he moved up to South South Lake Tahoe. And then eventually he ends up being a doctor in Scripps Drive on Sacramento, California. So I did do some looking up on this, but we can see visibly that this handwriting is completely different than the author of the phone book. So who put this in there? Who knows?
And misspelled professional. Professional.
Yeah, I didn't get that part.
What is that?
That's very cryptic, very strange.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Mhm.
all right. So I was able to actually blow up the comparison of facts surrounding the 7 SOC cases with the 7 children. So clearly they do believe that these 7 were together. But when we start looking at the OCC case, they want to almost isolate it to just 3 or 4. But I can't even see how they can do that. So we have 2 that I didn't see acknowledged. We know Mark Stebbins is part of what they consider to be the OCCK. Jane Louise Allen, I'm not sure of her so much, but I do know Jill Robinson, Christine Milich, and Timothy John King were all what they consider to be the Oakland County child murders. So we have these other 3 outliers that play into this and died around the same time and all of the same kind of circumstances. What I don't know if everybody in Michigan has freckles, but there's a lot of kids with freckles on this list.
Well, the fact that it's 7 in a cluster like that is, and we've got 7 come 11. I think all of them, even though they think one of these crimes they pinned on somebody or tried to or caught someone, but 7 of them in one area, that's too
right.
many. Way
over
too
less
many.
than a 14-month period about. Yeah,
Right.
14-month period. So, of course, I was looking at how long they were missing. One was only missing 6.5 hours before the body was found. I don't understand why they marked one as not missing. So she was never missing, like at sister's home. Oh, so Sheila Strock was killed at the house that she was at. So she never technically went missing.
At the house.
Gotcha.
And that's why some of these people call these babysitter killings, which I think is a distraction too from the truth. But
right. Well, I also thought that was because they were bathed, they had stomachs full of food, like they're these
that too.
Yeah, things that are going on. So Mark Stebbins was missing for 4 days before they found him, but that doesn't really indicate that he had been held for 4 days. Just they didn't find him for 4 days. I mean, if you
he was reported missing on the first day right off the bat, and his body turns up in a parking lot, on the edge of what was it called, plaza.
Well, 4 days. But does that mean it took 4 days for somebody to find it? Could he have been killed the day that he went missing, and it took 4 days for someone to find it?
No, I think that the autopsy on him showed that he was not dead for all that long at the time that they found his body. Been suffocated.
Yeah, he was held
somewhere. All of these were held alive. For Mihalich, she was held for 19 days. This thing is going to get wilder and wilder as we go through the documents and the things that the Stebbins is the tip of the iceberg, but all of it's an iceberg. But
with Jane Louise Allen, she was held 3 days. Jill Robertson was held 3.5 days. Christine Milich was 19 days, or at least this is how long they were missing. And then Timothy King was only gone 6 days.
Right. And 19 days is an extensive period of time to hold Christine Mihalich alive. And I think she was held that long because they were laying in wait for Tim King. But we'll get to that argument later.
And he's the one I thought was interesting because when they got to the familial background, while they'll tell you who they're living with, it isn't until you reach Timothy King that you see lived with parents, 2 brothers, 1 sister, upper middle class, father, and an attorney.
Right.
They didn't go that deep on anybody else, what they did, what they're, what they
right.
Yeah.
Extremely interesting that it was listed that way.
Well, there's some spooky stuff. There's some spooky stuff about Stebbins, and I sent you a document where his mother said that her phone number was unlisted. Right when the cops were visiting her, she got an obscene phone call. She said the voice sounded familiar, but she was upset that it was supposed to be an unlisted number.
Oh, well, we're going to get to that.
Okay.
Where it says sexual attack, they indicate that Cynthia Cadu showed signs of being sexually attacked. Sheila Rock, signs. Mark Stebbins, signs. Jane Lewis Allen, no evidence of a sexual attack. Jill Robertson, no evidence of attack. Christine Milik, conflicting evidence. So they're not really sure if she was sexually attacked or not. And then just a question mark on Tim King. And I don't understand why there's a question mark, because what does that mean? Nobody told you?
I think the cops are probably not withholding things. At that point in time, I think that they were tight-lipped about the thing completely. So they weren't sharing anything, and they stayed that way.
Listening to some of these causes of death, we have Cynthia Cadu with a skull fracture from a blunt instrument. Sheila Rock was 3 gunshot wounds in the abdomen. Mark Stebbins was smothered. Jane Louise Allen died of carbon monoxide poisoning. Jill Robertson, a shotgun blast to the face, no less.
Top of her head.
Christine Milik, smothered. And then Timothy King, again, question mark. So did they not discover how Timothy King died?
Well, he died of suffocation, according to what they said. There are autopsy reports on him say he was suffocated, that he think his nose was pinched and is suffocated that way. Same way as Stebbins.
Christine and Stebbins.
Christine also, yeah.
So that's extremely interesting, because Jack's ex-wife talked about her son coming home and walking in on Jack trying to smother her and basically stopped him in the act, which is just frightening. Ugh, I can't imagine ever having to deal with that, man. Anyways, all right, so let's see. I don't think there's anything else in there. It brings us to our first annotated picture from the Chris Bush crime scene, and you annotated this here, so I'm going to let you describe this.
Well, you see all those inverted Fs. Those are something that Jack loved, and you find out in the historical Zodiac Jack documents. He had a fixation. He had a fixation with the Fs, as we'll see when we get to the Ramsey murder note. I won't speculate as what they mean, but you can see they're all over the document. But the big one is the crosshair symbol on the earlobe, And plus, as we said in our last episode, why would this be hanging on, a suspect on Chris Bush's bedroom, hanging on the wall? I mean, it's just so out of place. So whose artwork is it? I would say it must be Jack's artwork. Chris Bush isn't going to put this on his own wall like a trophy.
I can't see somebody doing that. That would be hands down the stupidest thing. When Michigan is all out on a manhunt, you already have probable issues with being accused of child molestation and molesting other boys. And this was something that his dad had been successful at getting Chris Bush off of, was being involved or being arrested and hung up for some of these acts that he had done. But I think there's a huge step to go from molesting something to killing something when suspicion could fall so heavily on you.
Well, when you read enough about Bush, Kathy Broad might have an issue with this, but he was not a vicious person per se. He was a kind of a happy-go-lucky person. So he doesn't fit the description of someone uptight, killer, etc. So, when we get to the documents that I have, and there are several of them for the Chris Bush murder scene. I know it's a murder, it's not suicide. Nobody kills himself that way. It's a screwy diorama, just like we're going to see with the Ramsey case. The screwiest stuff is at that crime scene, and it's like a diorama. And the big one's going to be that blanket at the foot of the bed that has the same motif as that cover of the.
Okay, we'll get to that. I haven't actually had an opportunity. Haven't had an opportunity as of yet, I think, to enter in Chris Bush and the condition of those pictures. I think I have them. I'm not sure, but if you want to send them to me, we can throw them in at some point so we can talk about and people can see what it is that you're discussing.
Right. I didn't want to overwhelm you with documents, so I just gave you what we're up to the point of talking about Stebbins. So I sent the Stebbins document.
Correct. No, and I appreciate that.
I'll just be brief on this one here. The point is the paper is saying victim's mom. They're quoting her saying, "We'll never know." Well, she didn't say we'll never know. She said we'll probably never know. Right. That's a big difference, I think, between saying, that and then what the reality was. She's saying, well, we'll probably never know. instead they make it like a firm, we'll never know, So
it's feeding the public to already be set up with the idea that this serial killer is never going to be found or figured out.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're never going to find out for dozens of years. That's where the Codebreaker Me comes in.
Yes, exactly. That's where the Codebreaker You comes in.
Okay, so you also have on there Julie Edgar of the Daily Tribune will never know. This is a very typical subliminal message ploy. It makes a firm statement and leaves out the pivotal word probably.
Yeah.
Now, you said over here under mileage was captured and held for 19 days. Where's the information that will show the whereabouts of Norberg? What's that?
Well, Norberger ended up being a little sideshow. He was found out in some eastern state, I think it was Wyoming or Montana or something like that, killed in a car accident. He was a suspect. His DNA didn't show that he was a suspect when they checked that, but he had it turned out that he had a cross or an ear or something that they think that belonged to Christine Mihalich, but that was never firmly proven, just what he had. So they checked him out, but it made for something for the, to be shown. But so Norberg was a nothing burger. Yeah, it didn't give us much. So
gotcha.
Temporary suspect.
And it's interesting that we talk about these car accidents where we think that they're accidents, yes, and whether or not they're fake, because the number one suspect for DB Cooper also died in a car accident. Are you guys remember? There was one gentleman that was involved, or that was heavily being looked at, and supposedly drove his car off of an isolated road or something. There was really like no cause for why he ended up in the accident, but he did and died as well. So it seems to be a theme.
Was that Rickshaw? Rickshaw? I'm trying to remember the famous suspects.
Rackstraw, but I thought Rackstraw was the one that Bruce Smith followed all the way up to the end and did the documentary on, trying to get him to speak up, and then he died shortly after from a heart attack, just like Arthur Lee Allen after being accused as being the suspect.
I think
there was another suspect in that series that had actually died by some strange, whacked out car accident on an isolated road.
Well, there was anybody but Jack Tarrance, let's put it that way, and they plucked a lot of suspects on the Cooper caper. So
I don't know why this other one is so small or ended up in the middle of here.
I don't either.
Let's go back.
We'll have one that's... Give me that one just for a moment. I'll tell you what you got.
Okay. I want to say, says one officer talked to, I can't read it. I don't know how that did not get blown up, and how.
I don't know why it's got a document right in the middle of it. I don't remember.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like it doesn't make any sense that it's there.
Well, this is talking about the placement near the Fairfax office building, and the suspect that they saw, one of the suspects described fits Jack Tarrance to the T, and the other one they described somebody that looked like him also, except they're claiming he was 6 feet tall. So I don't know why you ended up with that particular one, if somebody's playing a game on you, but I don't have a document like that in my files.
Hold on one second. I'm fixing it right now. So I'm going to delete that. I'm going to delete that.
Set it aside.
Blow this one up. I know you guys can't see all that's going on, but here we go. And now let's go back to here, and we're going to go back to slideshow from current slide. There we go. Hide presenter view, and let's go and present this again. All right. Can we there we go. Back up on the presentation. All right. So this is, can you read that, Terry B, or do you need me to read it and you tell me what you found?
I can click on my files. Let me just get my orientation here. Body found. Okay. They're talking about the placement of Stebbins, and he was put right in plain view. And at the Fairfax.
I don't know which one you're on, but that's not. This is 12:30 p.m. This date undersigned interviewed Edward Bernstein and Phyllis Lauer of Schartzman Accounting, located in the Fairfax office building. Miss Lauer states she parked her. Oh, so this is the parking lot where the body was found. You're correct. Sorry, keep going. I thought you were reading the whole thing. Go ahead.
Right. No, I'm just saying I'm trying to get to the point with it. And the point is that they said this person was 35 to 40 years old, 240 to 260 pounds, was 6 foot tall. Well, that's not Jack Torrance, but there's a conflicting one you're going to see from the same time frame that I sent you as well that does match the description of Jack Torrance. That I sent it with the same group.
Okay, it's coming up then. So then the next one talks about the Fairfax Office Plaza. So that's just continuing on, and what you're giving us the date and the time frame that the body was found approximately.
Right.
JT and Stebbins murder case info ? Subject has a good view of area under question, large picture window, chair facing towards 10 Mile, also police scanner in front of the room. So is this is a suspect or a subject that they're talking about that had bird's eye view of this area? Right,
somewhat. It sounds like it to me. It's somewhat of an elevated view of the area, and it conflicts with the other one you're going to see in terms of description. Well, 240. I don't know if Jack was quite that heavy, but
I don't think so, because we saw that picture of him, and of course you couldn't really tell the size of his belly, but he obviously did not look as big as he did when he was in Scotts Valley with Nora in front of the ice blue Chevy. But in 1975, the Christmas pictures we showed last week showed him being a thinner individual at that point.
Right. It was just in the file, so I sent it. That's the one there.
Right. So now this one is officer talked to Stebbins by phone conference. Miss Stebbins' mother. Officer was obtaining information from her when at 4:55 p.m. Phone call from subject who stated, do you know that? You know that document?
Yes, I do. That's the one where I was saying earlier that she's talking to the cops and she gets a phone call. It's an obscene phone call. And he's telling her what he wants to do to her. And then he says, you know what I'm doing right now? He says, I'm jacking off. And then she stated that, and on the same document, I sent you an annotated one of this too, where I circled the fact that she said it was an unlisted phone that he called on.
Oh, here it is. Sorry, here it is. Here's a bigger view of it. So that other one probably just was a secondary one. I had already blown it up and put it in here, but you're right. So this is pretty nasty. Earmuffs that don't want to hear this, but Ruth Stebbins, she stated, and he stated, I'm going to come over and stick my D in you. He then stated, do you know what I'm doing? And she stated, what? And he replied, I'm jacking off.
There's a key word there, jack.
I know.
And it's like, come on. But she said that she thought she recognized the voice, but she was upset that, listen, I have an unlisted phone call. Why are they calling this number?
Right.
Well, to me,
the voice was familiar, but it was muffled, and she could not know who it was.
Right. The takeaway is that this is inside information. So when we get to the Tim King case, you're going to see that, there's no way he could operate it without inside information. But he had somebody had inside information. They've got on a listed call, and they have the nerve to call when there's a cop there as well. So, and they're saying the word Jack ends up in the message. I mean, come on.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Can I say something just really quick? When I saw that, and you're picking out the words too, Dick Nixon. He's no longer president, and Jack and his crew are referring to him as Dick Nixon. So there's something code there. And then Stebbins worked for Nixon. Then he was in the State Department. He was with Ford's State Department.
Was it the same Stebbins, or was it the namesake? In other words, was he?
No, it's Robert Stebbins. Robert Stebbins worked for Nixon.
And was Robert Stebbins then Mark Stebbins' actual father?
I believe so, because I had to do some genealogy tracking down and everything. And so, the voice would sound familiar if it's connected somehow to to the State Department, to whatever. But that's what I'm saying. I'm picking out those words, and I know vulgarly, that's a vulgar word, but I'm seeing them referring to Richard Nixon. That was his nickname, Dick Nixon.
Gotcha.
Yep. You got a keyword. You got keywords. You got too many keywords there. Too many. 7 come 11. You got 7 victims in this. The upper right-hand corner is this guy here that was suspicious, and if you'll see he had a criminal record, and his name was William Allen Peterson. Okay.
Oh, you know why that name was circled?
Yes, and I send you documents as when the cops checked him out because somebody took the card from the funeral home and placed it where the body had been dumped. It's like, come on, Well,
the letter to Dr. Danto that we're going to come across in this, the typewritten letter, he states that he was an unwilling accomplice, scared for his life kind of thing, but wanted to turn himself in at a bar to tell his story about this killer, and it was actually signed by Alan. Right?
Yeah, exactly. He's just playing Zodiac games. It was just
that's probably why they circled. That's probably why they circled this name in the book, because Alan was a reference in the Dr. Danto letter.
Well, they circled it because this Alan character here has a criminal record for attempted rape or a rape charge that got reduced. So he's not a nice guy. Wasn't a nice guy.
And then, of course, they underline this Tom.
Yeah, I don't remember the Tom Collins. Is that a drink?
Yeah.
A Tom Collins drink? He said a lot of bars that Jack could go to and he liked his drink. Did he drink Tom Collins? That's a mixer that goes, I don't know much about potables, but.
Gosh, I had that on there way too many times.
I'm getting the same problem on my end. I have so many copies of that keep going through with that address book in my computer, so that I have all these copies, but I only show one copy. So someone has hijacked my own computer. I have not repaired that. I leave it that way, and I'm not sharing it. I know intentionally I leave it that way.
So now this next one talks about cars that were apparently in the area when Mark Stebbins' body was found or when he was taken.
Right, and any point I was going to make to you about this here, I would have circled something on here, but the car that they're describing, does come up. Oh, there's a description. We have a dark-complected white male, 5'10", heavy build, approximately 45 years old. He had medium length thinning hair, driving.
That's check.
See what I'm saying? He had next to him was a white male, and this would probably be Stebbins dead, sitting in the car, which is going to be, you're going to see as an MO with Jack. And some of Jack did this stuff. You say that he caught his eye because he looked like his nephew, the kid sitting in the car. So this was right near the time and when the nervy Jack Torrance placed that body in a kind of a busy area. Snuck that body on the ground, and I sent you a picture of that body too. But go ahead with it.
Yes.
With your documents.
That's okay. So I was just going to read some of the stuff here. It says that on 2/15/76 between noon and 1 p.m., he was at the Village Flea Market at 10 Mile and Woodward. He observed a late model GM, Buick or Cadillac, maroon/white in color with possible for sale signs in the windows. He observed a dark complected, like you said, okay, we got the white male, 5'10", heavy build. That does line right up with Jack. And at 45 years of age, in 76, he would have been, so in 69, he was 41. So in 76, we're going to add a 7. So he's 48. He's right there at that 45 cusp mark. So not too far off. So then that brings us to this next document.
This is a little sideshow to the thing where Mrs. Stebbins was upset, and her son had been accosted by a couple of young ruffians named, I'm not sure how to pronounce that last name, Sochi, Soucie.
Yeah.
And she was upset, and she wanted to see the two of them, and she got charged or was accused of stalking these two boys at one point, which probably ended up being in fact a false charge, that she did not stalk them. And she was kind of set up, as you'll see in the next documents, where she had some strange woman show up. I don't know if this time where the kid was missing or dead. I didn't check the time frame on this. Well, we can figure it out from 219, at the top of the report. Anyway, this is part of another document or part of a string of documents where they look at this Sauci. And plus, you can see the name of Sauci is in the funeral registry, which I didn't send you all the picture documents of that, and I will. And if you want to look at them, you should look at them. You should have them. So I try not to overwhelm you with that because there's a lot in that. There's just a ton of documents. I'm telling you.
So I'm trying to understand the basis for this particular document. So it's an officer received a phone call from below reference above complaint. So Margaret Gray is called in, states she went down to the Stebbins home and talked to Ruth Stebbins. She states this definitely was the woman who came to her house in August. She states she had coffee with Miss Stebbins for a half an hour. Miss Stebbins would not admit she was the one involved. So I'm not understanding how there's a complaint here, but it says officer talked to Lieutenant Sullivan of the Ferndale Police Department, who stated he talked to Miss Stebbins in reference to the above of this meeting, and she states she's upset and knows nothing of these accusations. He also talked to the two Sauci boys, Tim and Ray, and they denied any knowledge. So was these two boys Margaret Gray's sons?
That's not clear to me. That's a good question.
No, yeah, Sauci versus, well, I mean, it's not like they couldn't have a different last name, but
I mean, you read it several times and tell me what you think, and so when you get a chance and
I think the context is out. I don't get it. Yeah, the context is out of bounds. So, all right, on to the next one.
I'll give you just the takeaway on it. The takeaway is like it was, they're trying to put words in Mrs. Stebbins' mouth, and she said, no, I didn't do that, and blah, blah, blah. And then as you'll see, the name Sauci will come up.
Well, you think the complaint would have been about Margaret Gray complaining that Stebbins' mother had come to her house and made accusations, but you're not seeing that inside of here.
But you're seeing that Mrs. Stebbins denied that. So it's screwy. Yeah. It's screwy. And there's more documents that go with it that talk about. And then what does
the Sauci boys have to do with Margaret Gray, and why would they then go back to her and them then deny any knowledge of what they did? The report is so unclear. The boys denied any knowledge of what? The meeting between Gray and Stebbins, or
right. Welcome to the Oakland County child killing documents that were given to the King family. I mean, you get a lot of that, and you have to sit and try to interpolate, well, what the hell are they talking about here? Because the cops aren't sharing much. They're just kind of playing their cards close to the vest most of the time. There were some good cops. I will say there were some that were really trying to do their job. But anyway, this next one's about William Allen Peterson. And if you look at everything having to do with him, because, well, he's the one that had a serious record that they were looking at, and he had his name at the Stebbins funeral. That's kind of police work 101 when they see who shows up for the funeral,
Right. So the country owner of Dub's Country Kitchen on 10 Mile in Greenfield, was that some place close to where the body was found?
Well, I think you're going to find that this one's going to be where they ask the person, did he ever work there? And he said, no, he never worked here. I can't, these are pretty small. That's what I'm down here.
Well, no, that is exactly what it says. So Martin Potashnik was questioned, and he said that William Peterson never even worked there. Right. And it speaks about the garbage being taken out at 11 a.m. and 8 p.m., but that's going to usually be thrown, like it says, it is carried and placed in the compactor. So it's not dumping trash across the way in some dumpster or something. Like, it's obviously a trash compactor, probably right out the back door somewhere in an alley or whatever it is, wherever it's placed. So very, very interesting, but again, incomplete reports.
Yeah.
All right, you guys, that gives us less than 30 seconds. This show has concluded. We will pick up where we left off next time. I want to thank everybody for being here. Terry and Harriet, again, interesting as always. And we'll continue with the Mark Stebbins legacy next weekend. Everybody enjoy and take care.
Bye-bye.
You guys want to sign off and say bye?
Bye-bye.
Bye, Harriet.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Everyone
Good
take
stuff.
care.
Good stuff.
Thank you.
Good job, Terry B.
Oh,